Welcome to Built to Work, the podcast that gets its hands dirty, dives into the grit, and uncovers the heart of what makes the blue-collar world tick. I'm Colin, your host, and I'm sitting down with the people who keep our world running. From those tackling the tough jobs no one else dares to do, to the HR professionals working overtime to find the labor force we desperately need. Whether you're in the trenches or behind the scenes, this podcast is for anyone who values hard work, determination, and stories that build the backbone of our workforce. So grab your gloves, your coffee, or your clipboard. It's time to get to work. Welcome to another episode of the Built to Work podcast. I am here today with my friend Randy Goodman. Randy, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks, Colin. It's great to be here.
Yeah, so I've gotten to know Randy over the last couple years, different industry events, running into each other, having conversations. Very interesting guy, has a long background in the recycled materials industry and the scrap industry. So I thought it'd be fun to chat with you and learn about your history and kind of what you're doing now. So, Randy, how'd you get your start in this industry?
Well, it was at a lake house, Lake Allatoona, Georgia, and I met a person that was friends of my sister's, and he was interested in hiring my sister, but instead he interviewed me for a position that was basically a grunt in a brokerage division, small brokerage house, non-ferrous, at a scrapyard in Atlanta, Georgia. I had a cousin of my mother's that was in the industry, and she told me to talk to him, and he said, I don't care if you have to sweep floors and clean out toilets, but if you can get into a family-owned business in the scrap metal industry, it would do you well. So I was a guy that made it through high school with little issues, and college was really challenging. Kind of consider myself smart, dumb. Not really a book smart guy, but kind of been able to navigate the world with street smarts and just common sense and a sales ability, if you will.
Okay.
So that was 1989. Fast forward 11 years, they got bought out and bankrupted afterwards. And we, coming out of that bankruptcy, failed to come out of it. And a little company out of New York City named Hugo New Schnitzer, Joint Ventures, back in 2001, picked me up to replace somebody who had been with them for 53 years, and he was 87 years old and had actually immigrated from Frankfurt, Germany, with Hugo New himself as a friend, and was doing all of the non-ferrous sales for the multinational ferrous company. And so it was an amazing jump into the big leagues, if you will, international marketing, traveling, and I just loved it. It was an amazing opportunity. So that's kind of how I made the jump into the international side of things. Along the way, I've been extremely active in the trade association, formerly known as ISRI, and actually named my company Scrapyard since I've been my consulting business, since I was on my own for a couple of years along the way recently. And worked alongside of the ISRI lay leadership to work on specifications for about almost 20 years. I actually led that specification group for about 15 years and wrote and modified a lot of the current specifications that we use today in the non-ferrous realm around the world. And then leadership. I was one of the people that helped start the trade committee, identified a need for something like that with a friend of mine, Andy Wall, and said we really need to be on this international front. And we need to understand back in the early 90s that, or in the early 2000s, that scrap was an international commodity and it wasn't localized. And you think you're competing with the person next door, but you're really not. You're competing with the world market. And China proved that to us in the early 2000s. So I've enjoyed that side of the business for many years. I was always on the sales side of the business until 2015. And I was able to make the flip to becoming a buyer for a trading house, American trading house, and did very well because of my exposure to the ISRI governance and the ISRI leadership and the work I had done. There was a lot of people out there that would at least sell me one load. And if I did well by them, they would sell me another. And we were able to actually take that first company that I was with and increase their business by tenfold in 3 years.
Wow.
Just by word of mouth and having a good reputation and continuing to grow it. So it was an amazing time. It was a fun 7 years. And after that, I fumbled a couple times. COVID was not necessarily good to me. As it wasn't for a lot of people. But I had a failed run for executive office within ISRI, REMA. And it was one of those things I had planned on for my life. That was one of my goals, was to be the future chair of ISRI. And kind of had to take a step back and figure out where I wanted to be and how I wanted to represent myself. And that's when I dropped my own tag of Scrappergy and started to come out as consultant in trading. I was at a roundtable meeting in Chicago for ISRI 2.5 years ago as a trader and consultant, and the event had at least another 100 to 200 people there, mostly Indian brokers and indenters. And as a small trader myself, I went up to some of my other friends that have been in the business for a long time, other trading companies, and I said, there's 100 new people here. I said, are there any new consumers in India at this time? And they said, no, not really. Well, are there any new suppliers in the United States? They're like, no, there's less because of consolidation. Like, well, what in the heck are these 100 new players doing in the business except muddying the waters for the traders that already exist? For big companies, they can absorb something like that and weather it out. For a small guy like myself, it was a writing on the wall that I really just didn't need to be trading anymore. It would eat my heart out having to deal with the fractions and fractions of cents that you were making. And a lot of the relationship parts were done. It was much, much more about that last quarter of a cent than what have you done for me lately. So I really, at that point, and I was talking to you at the time as well about consulting and working on different projects to introduce other accessorial industries to scrap, people that have or a product or a service that can help impact scrap and figure out a way to pay it forward on mine and give back. And that's kind of where Pillar came into play about 1.5 years ago when I met Harsha Ramesh, the co-founder. And it was a match made in heaven because they had just gone through their first round of venture capital at some point before that, and were I think of scrap metal as their proof of concept, if you will, that their product, which is a AI-powered hedging platform, was unique to our industry. And I'd never seen it, and it's a problem that I've always had and wanted solved, and that was everybody has a spreadsheet from hell. And everybody hates it, and they can't agree on data in it between the financial side of the business and the commercial side of the business. And this was a better mousetrap. I'd never seen anything like it before. And although I can't delve into and don't choose to delve into how the sausage is made, they basically have a way that runs your entire hedge program online with AI powered while it's plugged into your systems in one way or another. And it's groundbreaking. Being able to take that on the road for the last 1.5 years, first as an advisor and now as the VP of sales, it's just been one of the most rewarding experiences I've ever had in my life.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it is. And I'm 62, and I'm working with a bunch of 20-somethings from age 23 to age 29, I think is where the majority of all the employees are, including the co-founders.
Well,
It's a good thing that you're bringing that wise counsel to the table, right? So they're not just totally shooting in the dark. You've got a lot of years of industry experience that you can bring them and say, hey, let's look out for these pitfalls, or here's something that people might actually want to see or utilize.
Well,
right?
and I think that's been part of the key is they respect that industry knowledge. They respect culturally the age. The company is the co-founders are both Indian born, but U.S. raised and educated, and I think that makes a distinction of who they are, how they are, and they've got a lot of the Western ways that makes business easier and good in my book, but at the same time, they've got a lot of the same family orientation that I would have from a Jewish family, you from a Christian, and them from their backgrounds. They treat people with more respect and with age. And I've even had them try to carry my bags along the way, which is a little embarrassing at this point. I didn't think I was ready for people to carry my bags.
You're like, no, I'm not that old yet.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well,
that's great. So you've spent a lot of time in the industry. You've seen a lot of different things. It sounds like most of it was on the buying and selling side. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I did spend a decent amount of time in my first 11 years operationally, working my way through that organization from everything from small scale buying non-ferrous to large scale buying ferrous, being the dispatcher, being the scale master. I kind of worked my way through logistics. And then operationally running small locations for them that first period. And when I went to Louisville back in 2011, I actually was managing the non-ferrous operation and overseeing sales for them. And then within a year or two, I was asked to take over as the general manager of the operations. And I said, well, I'm not a ferrous guy. And he's like, I don't care. He goes, I like the way you operate, and I think you'll do well managing that end of things too. So that was a wonderful experience for the time that it was. So yeah, I always do treat the operation side of things as extremely important and like to get involved. I've always been the guy that was in the lab or doing my own sampling of products when it came to the Zorbas or the Zurichs, because that was really where I cut my teeth, was in the mixed metal non-ferrous that was going over to China and Southeast Asia. And so I was always with buckets of scrap, sorting it out and segregating it to find out true intrinsic value of the metals.
So you haven't spent your whole life then just on the phone or behind the computer. You've gotten your boots dirty, you've gotten your hands dirty, you've been out there
for sure
in the yard.
Spent years in the yard always, and even when I was overseeing non-ferrous sales for OmniSour Southeast at the time, CRG, Carolina's Recycling Group, I spent the time to go out into the yard every day to make sure that I was actually seeing, touching, feeling the metal in the product and seeing what the pushes and the pulls are within the operation. Part of my consulting gig was the fact that most companies run under the false premise that it's an I'll catch it, you skin it, he'll eat it kind of an attitude. And I refer to that to the people that are buying it versus the people that are processing it versus the people that are selling it. 3 different people in most cases in most organizations, and yet those 3 don't communicate well enough that you get the tail wagging the dog, and the tail changes places a lot of times as to which one is which. It needs to be better lines of communication because you can't sell what the buyer wants to sell or what the seller wants to sell. You have to sell what the buyer wants. You kind of have to make that conversation linear instead of just ad hoc and coming back when you have issues. So I've always been involved in that side of it and trying to streamline and making sure that all parties are in it, and have skin in the game. So that it's not a he said, she said at the end of the day.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. So yeah, I mean, I think you're alluding to this with your experience being in the yard, and it probably goes to the trading, and I know it goes to our portion of the industry as well, is that for all of us to have success, communication is the key.
I agree.
Yeah.
When I was with Greenland and we were going into lockdown because of COVID, I remember we had a phone system, Ring Central, and it had this product in it that I thought was proprietary to them called Zoom. Nobody had ever heard of it before. And I was thrilled because I'd already tested it out as a video system. And so the first day we were all at home, we all had Zoom and we all had it up on our computers. And I made sure everybody actually had a second monitor within a couple of days so that we could be together in the office, out of the office, if you will, and still communicate like we did in a bullpen kind of a atmosphere. And I told people, you don't have to have your camera on at all times. You don't have to have your mic on at all times, but we're still there and we're still operating a business and we need to continue to figure it out. So I've always been about team building and communication and succession planning. And that's always been important to me. I always have an attitude that I got to train the next person because if I drop dead tomorrow, God forbid, somebody's got to be able to take the business and move forward.
Yeah, that's interesting. You brought that up. I was on the live stage at REMA here, I guess, last month, and I had the opportunity to talk with a couple guys and talk about some of that because they're taking over family businesses, and that succession planning is really something that gets missed a lot, right? Whether it's transitioning it from parent to child, or hey, I want to build this business so that I can sell it, and I just don't have to dump it on the market. And if you don't have that succession planning going, and you're not bringing somebody up behind you, and you're not training somebody, the business doesn't have a ton of value if the founder is the guy. Mm-hmm. If you are the guy that everybody has to talk to, or everybody has to go through, then your value doesn't have a whole lot of business. Your business doesn't have a lot of value on the market, or you're going to have to spend a lot of time extricating yourself from that. So yeah, always having that succession planning, that looking ahead on what the next step is always really important.
Well, and it reminds me of the conversation I had with one of my former bosses, where he specifically said to me, when we lose somebody like you, it can really take the company down. And I'm like, well, you're right. I said, but I made sure that didn't happen. And I made sure of it for multiple years beforehand by training other people to take over in my stead, whether it's for a day, a month, or if I'm gone, for whatever reason. And they were like, they acquiesced that point and said, you're right. You did have in place. And so it was a check mark on my side from a difficult situation that we came out of when we parted ways. But it was like the reality of what we accomplished during that time can't be ignored, and we did great things together during that time. So, I've had ends of relationships not go well with business, and I hate that. But I've made an effort in the last years to try and make up for that. And try and resolve a lot of those things because it just doesn't pay off in the long run.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right. When it comes to training that next person, I think some people are afraid to train their replacement, especially from the manager side, because they're worried that they're going to get replaced. When I really like the phrase delegate and elevate, right? So you are able to delegate and train your work down. It then allows you to ascend to the next level of management, ownership, whatever that is, where you can then focus on bigger picture things that are driving the business or operational efficiencies or whatever you want to focus on. If you've been able to delegate some of those more daily tasks or the responsibility that you can then train on.
That's right on the head, because it could be perceived a different way. It could be perceived that you don't want to have to do the dirty work. You don't want to have to do the lifting. And it's like, you know what? You should do, just because I'm good at it doesn't mean I should be the one doing it. Okay. And just because I train that person below me doesn't mean that I own that forever, and shouldn't, because what you want me doing is the next sale and the next deal. And in order to be able to move on to that comfortably, knowing that your left hand is still operating behind the scenes, you have to have somebody behind you. You have to train the right people that you feel comfortable that you can walk away from it and move on to the next thought process without worrying if the other's going to happen behind you.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely right. Absolutely right. So as you're working in Pillar now, I understand you guys are doing your AI, your hedging. You've done some funding rounds. What does your future look like with Pillar and your advisory role, and kind of what's your goal there?
Well, I'm pleased to say that I've transitioned from an advisory role into the vice president of sales for scrap recycling.
Nice, great.
Yeah,
Congrats.
and I do say scrap recycling because their product is transportable into many, many industries. The natural gas, the oil, the agriculture. Hedging is hedging. It's a financial tool that's deaf, dumb, and blind to the actual commodities themselves, as long as they're traded on a liquid exchange somewhere in the world. They can be hedged. And Pillar just has a better mousetrap. It came from two co-founders. One, Harsha Ramesh, was a floor trader for Barclays Bank at one point on Wall Street. Chinmay Deshpande was a writer, programmer for Coinbase. And they both went to school together in Nashville.
Okay.
And our COO, Daniel Friedland, was a very close friend of Harsha's and also went to school with him. It has come on as our third C, the COO. Chinmay is our CTO. And Harsha's the CEO. Although I wanted the CEO title, I wanted to be the Chief Entertainment Officer. It's just not available yet.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
What I do isn't a heavy lift for me. It's not selling a product. It's doing just what I did with you, is just describe it, how it is a better mousetrap. And people do have the spreadsheet from hell. And you use terms like that and it gets people engaged. And then I can hand it over to one of our guys that can demo it, because you actually have to have a Series 3 license to demo the product. And it really does a great job of selling itself after that. One of the wonderful things they've done is they've done a group think over the last year, taking all the ideas and all the question marks that people gave us about, will the program do this and why wouldn't it do that, or can you do that? And they've done a fantastic job of incorporating those into the program over the last year. So the program has really formatively grown and changed to service our industry. And it's a tribute to how Harsha and Chinmay have used their second round of venture capital that they just came through back in April, and are putting that money right back into the company, and to build it out further and to make a better product for the industry and other.
That's great. Yeah. All right. Well, it sounds like you guys are on the up and up then. That's great to hear.
I'm having the best time I've had in years. I'm traveling a lot. I've just gone 3 weeks, and right now I'm in the process of planning a trip in August that'll take me away for 30 days.
Wow.
But it's rewarding, and to see the impact we've had, the impact I've had overseas over the years, that people still remember me. And I've got friends in India and the Middle East, Dubai, and those areas, because of the work I did for ISRI, writing specifications over the years and their meetings. That's all paying off, and it's wonderful to be able to travel in that circle again.
That's great. That's great. Well, it sounds like things are going really well for you and for Pillar. So that's super exciting, because I've enjoyed getting a chat with you and kind of see what the future holds as you were kind of setting out on your own. So I kind of like to end it with, as we look back, in years of experience in the scrap industry, the trading, now you're in the hedging, the AI, the tech space, what's, kind of the most valuable lesson learned, or something that somebody coming into the, scrap or metals industry should know? What's one of those valuable nuggets you could share?
Well, I think that keeping an open mind, both vertically, looking vertically and horizontally, meaning that you have to keep an open mind looking down to the people in the yard all the way up to the people that are unloading it on the side, on the other end, and know that it's not just the partnerships between the purchaser and the seller or the operations and the buyer. It's the whole relationship. There's other partners in the transaction, whether it be the logistics company, whether it be the containers that you're using, the railroad, the steamship lines. All of them are partners in the play, and you have to be cognizant and treat everybody the right way, whether they're treating you that way or not, in order to make it through the process. You got to have an open mind, and you've got to be very open and understanding of different cultures, different ways of seeing things and doing things.
Okay, that's great. Well, from somebody that's been around for a few years and had a lot of experience with a lot of different people across many oceans and many states, there's a lot of wisdom in that. So thank you for sharing that, Randy. And I really appreciate your time. Thanks for coming to chat with me. And I hope you continue to kill it and Pillar continues to blow up. And I wish you guys the best of luck.
Well, and I hope you can throw up our website at the bottom there. We'll point down there and say www.pillarhq.com.
All right, we'll get her done. So, all right. Thank you, Randy.
Thanks. Good to talk to you.